While the U.S. economy is crashing and Donald Trump is saving shower heads, we have the House Republicans passing the most unconstitutional, comprehensive voter suppression legislation that I have seen in my lifetime. Here it is. They call it the SAVE Act of all things. And Mark Elias is a voting expert, and he is going to explain to us exactly what the SAVE Act does.
A telling sign of the age in which we live that House Republicans, in the middle of a financial crisis, when Donald Trump is ruining our alliances around the world, when Elon Musk and Doge are trashing our federal government, when prices are rising, the thing that the House Republicans spend time on is to try to disenfranchise millions of voters. So the SAVE Act is aimed at disenfranchising all manner of people, young voters, transient voters, married women. All eyes have been on the Republicans in Congress to see whether they try to advance this bill, even in light of all of the unpopular measures they have now been stuck carrying for Donald Trump. There was some thought maybe because Donald Trump put forward his own anti-voting executive order, that was to take the heat off of House Republicans from having to carry this this bill forward. But
okay,
oh no,
stop it there.
no.
What the SAVE Act does is it requires you to present a birth certificate to vote. Married women, I think the statistic was 8 out of 10 married women have their married name on their driver's license. It is not the same as their birth certificate. So that means unless they have a passport, they will be unable to vote. Also, statistically, only 1/3 of Americans have a passport. All of these other people will not be allowed to vote because Republicans know the only way they win elections is to suppress voters. It's unbelievable that this is happening in 2025.
I'll tell you, this is why they win elections. Because do you see how they're taking their agenda? Everything that they campaigned on, we're 80 days into this and they're already cramming this stuff through. The Democrats don't operate like this, and we could, and we should, and we don't. And the reason that we don't is the reason that we have Trump, because we always do the politics of assumption. We assume the Republicans wouldn't do that. That's so crazy. We assume that nobody's going to vote for Donald Trump the third time. That seems insane. And if the Democrats, when they get the trifecta of power, like MAGA Republicans have now, they should have, when Biden won, they should have fixed the Supreme Court. Donald Trump should have been in prison. They should have done so many different things. But instead, they quietly govern. Biden put out a lot of good things. But look at the difference. Look at the two different games we're playing here. It doesn't surprise me one bit that they're doing this. Voters have always been a problem for them. It surprises me 0% that they're attacking women. Women have always been a problem for them. And one of the biggest things that they attack, both in law and in civil rights. But this right here tells me when they get in, they're maniacal about their agenda. And it doesn't surprise me because they've always run on this type of stuff. But the speed at which they enact their agenda, I wish the Democrats had the balls to do that shit. I really do.
I completely agree. One thing that they also did in Congress yesterday was passed forward the new cuts to Medicare and Social Security. Now let's look at this. $880 billion in cuts to Medicaid, $230 billion cuts to food assistance, 14+ trillion in new debt, all to fund a $7 trillion in tax cuts for the ultra wealthy. This is unconscionable. People should be furious. We've got Doge cutting programs. All of this, cutting the Board of Education, all of this is so billionaires, oligarchs and corporations can have more money, so they don't have to pay taxes. None of these things would be an issue if we taxed the rich, but we don't want to do that because we've got MAGA in control, and Donald Trump is the author of more oligarchy than ever seen in this country. It is disgusting, and people are going to suffer.
Well, you know, where we live, white people have always used the excuse for decades, and they give themselves a permission structure. They say, I'm fiscally conservative, but but I'm socially liberal. And that's a way when they're in more sophisticated circles that they can cover for their racist, cruel default setting. And to all of the fiscal conservative Republicans that have for decades tried to, when you're out at parties, be kind to Black people socially, because it makes you feel like, oh, maybe I'm not a racist. Maybe my voting record is one thing, but look I was just really nice to this Black person. Oh my God, here's a gay person. I'm going to be super nice to them. This is the most evil statement because I have heard it my entire life, long before MAGA. Fiscally conservative. If you're so fiscally conservative, you'd quit voting for Republicans because they add more national debt to the debt total than Democrats could ever dream of. Furthermore, they break the economy so much and deregulate it that then taxpayers have to pay for a bailout because of your inability to acknowledge that maybe we need to have guardrails. And so then taxpayers further bail them out. And now we're going to give them further tax breaks. And it just goes and goes and goes. And you can feed the rich and you can feed the rich and you can feed the white rich people all you want to. It will never be enough because they think they're better. And I know this, and she knows this because we know these people, and they are in their hearts and minds. When you hook them up to truth serum and a polygraph, they're racist and they think white people are better, and more white people need to speak out about it because this is insane. It is welfare for the rich.
Well, and no bigger parasite than Elon Musk. So moving on to something that I do not think is getting enough coverage is this measles outbreak we have in the United States. And we've got Robert F. Kennedy, who's just a complete dipshit. But he said something yesterday at the cabinet meeting that I found alarming, and it was about autism. So let's hear what he has to say yesterday in the cabinet meeting.
We are going at your direction. We are going to know by September. We've launched a massive testing and research effort that's going to involve hundreds of scientists from around the world. By September, we will know what has caused the autism epidemic, and we'll be able to eliminate those exposures.
So big. Think of that.
Okay, that's a lie. We all know that's not going to happen. But we also all know, because Trump's response was, oh, it's the shots. They're trying to prove that autism is caused by vaccines. The measles MMR is what they're saying. That has been disproven. Expertise has been lost. And then he doesn't quite come out and say it there, but on Fox News, this is what he has to say.
I'm sorry, there was a thought that vaccines might be related to this. Then they did several studies that said that there was no connection between vaccines and autism. So what are you seeing in this data that you're looking at, or is it all going to be brand new?
The studies that they did were very, very narrow, and there were about 17 studies. The Institute of Medicine, which is part of the National Academy of Sciences, says that 14 of those studies are invalid. And the biggest weakness in those studies is they never studied vaccinated versus unvaccinated group, which is the only way that you can really make this determination.
Okay, I want to remind everybody, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is not a scientist. He is an attorney. I am an attorney. I should not be giving you advice about vaccines. But then the department that he took over, he has been a conspiracy theorist about vaccines. Again, that's why you've got all these measles outbreaks, because people don't want vaccines. Now we have this, and this is a HHS scientist who says it has become clear that truth and transparency are not desired by the secretary, but rather he wishes subservient confirmation of his misinformation and lies. Dr. Peter Marks wrote in a resignation letter referring to Health and Human Safety Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. This is a scientist that says he is going to bring in quack scientists that are going to give you quack reports, and then people are going to suffer to entertain his wild conspiracy theories. And it's alarming. Thank goodness my kids are past this, but people are going to continue to be led by false scientists, and children and people of all ages are going to be adversely impacted. And some, as we've already seen from measles, are going to die. It is unconscionable that this is happening.
First thing I want to say is I read that there are more people in the United States with measles than there are trans athletes. So that's an interesting tidbit. But secondly, this is what Republicans do. They promote junk scientists. And this is what the oil companies have been doing for years regarding climate change, even though there is evidence, objective evidence, that the oil and gas industry has known since the 70s that the CO2 was causing warming to the planet. They cover it up. This is what happened with the opioid epidemic. You have the Sackler family that hired junk scientists and said that Oxycontin and opioids were not addictive and were able to cram it through the FDA. And you have millions of Americans that have died from this because the fight on science is all a part of this authoritarian idea. And it started before Trump. When you, as a society, you value money and individualism over the good of the collective, you're not going to have a sustainable place that's safe and regulated for people to live. And sadly, in America, Americans cherry pick when it's beneficial to them to believe something, and when it's not beneficial to them, they reject it. And this has been ingrained into us, and now it's manifested itself in our government. And now we have the worst impulses that this country has bred and enforced, all in power with no guardrails.
Well, and led by the biggest dipshit, Donald Trump, and it just trickles down, the most incompetent clown car of cabinet. It's disturbing. It's concerning. Educate yourself about everything, because there is not going to be much help for you in the world of the government. Please stick with us. We're trying to get to 1 million subscribers.